This is Owl Talk,
a Sigma Pi podcast
featuring stories,
news, updates, and more
from the world of Sigma Pi Fraternity.
We are back with another episode of the Owl Talk podcast. In this episode, we're talking about one of the great support organizations for Sigma Pi Fraternity, and that's the Sigma Pi Educational Foundation. I'm happy to be joined by Mike Long, an alumnus from our Zeta-Pi Chapter at Oakland University over in Michigan. Mike became the chairman of the board for the foundation back in 2024, but he has a long history as a volunteer for Sigma Pi, having served as a province Archon and a chapter advisor. We'll go over all of that and more. So, Mike, welcome to the Owl Talk podcast.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to be here.
You know, Mike, when I'm talking to a fellow Sigma Pi alumnus, I like to start these episodes by giving the guest a chance to talk about their personal, their educational, their Sigma Pi backgrounds. So maybe you can start by telling our listeners, where you're from originally, what drew you to Oakland University, and then ultimately, what drew you to Zeta-Pi Chapter?
Well, what's interesting is I grew up very close to Oakland University since I was 7 years old, right? We moved very close, and that is it was in my backyard. It was in my backyard to the point where I moved onto campus when I went to college. I was on the 5th floor of my dorm, but if I went up to the 7th floor of my dorm, I could see my house. So that's how close I lived to the school. But I had applied to other schools and I had gotten into other schools. I started off in systems engineering, and the school has a good engineering school. And I did want to go away because I think it's important for any young person to kind of break off from your family a little bit, but also keep them close. I didn't want to move across the country, but I did move out. I thought it was important and I could do that, but my family was still close and I still had a good university nearby. So that is why I went to Oakland. And like I said, I started out in engineering. They had have a good engineering school. I eventually switched to human resource development as my major. And I actually was one of the rare people who got a job in my field and continued to work in my field from what I had studied in undergrad. So it was a pretty good move all around.
There you go. A big switch, though, systems to HR.
It was a big switch, but something that kind of continued throughout my college career I was in the fraternity, and that support that was there definitely helps as well, because it's always, strange switching majors. A lot of people switch majors, but a lot of the classes you start off with no longer applied. You have to kind of start over, and that's a lot to go through. And I'm really glad I had the support system that was there through my family, of course, is going to support me, but my friends and the people that were going through it at the same time as me was really nice to have as I went through that process in school.
Let's talk about Zeta-Pi Chapter. What drew you to want to be a member of Zeta-Pi Chapter during your undergraduate years?
I went into college not even really thinking about being Greek. Some people want to join a fraternity. Some people absolutely do not. And then there's a lot of people like me that wanted to have that social aspect of being in college. That's what you see in popular culture and movies and things, sometimes about fraternities, but even just this is supposed to be the good times. This is supposed to be when you're going to have a good social life. You can study and play and you have good prospects for your life. And Sigma Pi seemed to give all of that to us. There were several fraternities on campus and I best fit with Sigma Pi. So that's who I ended up kind of naturally hanging out with my first semester. And eventually I got a bid and initiated, and I'm so glad I did. But it did kind of happen naturally that I was able to fit in, and I was able to see how important that social aspect was, even just joining college before any of those other big bumps happened.
Yeah, it's a critical part of development for young men, socializing, particularly today. I mean, the undergrads today have got this loneliness epidemic on campus, and fraternities are the solution. So socializing with groups like Zeta-Pi, that's what solves that problem for young men. Now, when you graduated, you became a volunteer for the fraternity. Chapter advisor, you became province Archon at some point. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to volunteer.
Well, I always wanted to give back. So the fraternity experience was interesting to me. If you step back, uh, your life experience and what we're supposed to do in society is what we can do. We're supposed to look out for ourselves. Human beings are pack animals, right? We do better as a society than living on your own. You certainly can, but it's easier if I can just go to the grocery store and someone already slaughtered the cow for me, right? But so I, can see that. But it is sort of so much of life is worrying about, how much can I make? What can I sell my labor for? That sort of thing. And the fraternity is about helping other people. And when you're in college, it's kind of an accident, right? A group of guys, no matter how big your chapter is, you're a group of guys can throw a way better party, a much better party than you doing it by yourself, or even you doing it with 2 or 3 other roommates that you might live with. And so that social aspect starts in college and it kind of continues into adulthood about giving back. And it's still fun. It's one of the only things I think that would still be fun, a fun way of giving back, especially on a consistent basis. So it was something where, I didn't become a chapter advisor right away. You make your way in the world, you get a job, you start that, working sort of mindset and going into adulthood, as I mentioned. But I eventually did want to give back. You missed the camaraderie, and it had done so much for me that I wanted to continue that. So I did start helping out with a troubled chapter in my area, and then eventually became a chapter advisor for my own chapter, and it was great. And then, after a while, things open up. Province Archon, would you like to do that? Sure. And you just get involved. And as you get involved with those things, you can keep going, you can stop, or you can see what other opportunities there are. So I kind of worked my way through eventually to the Sigma Pi Educational Foundation, where I joined in 2021. It was kind of during COVID, and this is when we were all suddenly kind of alone and not seeing nearly as many people as what we were used to. And so that's when I joined the Educational Foundation Board, and then eventually became chair in 2024. But that was kind of the story of how I did it. I liked doing it, and it is fun, and it's one of the only fun ways of being able to give back.
Amen. There is this virtuous cycle that you can help create when you've had a good undergraduate experience. And then, as you say, you mature a little bit after you graduate, you find yourself in adulthood, and then you start to give back to that same entity that gave you that great undergraduate experience. That's the virtuous cycle we try to create. So we're gonna talk about being the foundation chairman and the Educational Foundation, but I've got the opportunity, so I feel like I should ask. You were a chapter advisor, you were a province archon. Do you have any quick messages for the chapter advisors or the province archons who might be out there listening to this? Any words of wisdom? What worked for you in those positions?
What worked best for me is presence. It was probably also the most difficult part, because now that we've found our way in adulthood, you have priorities. A lot of people are starting families, or different jobs require different, have different constraints on your own personal life. But what worked best for me was when I went regularly to our chapter meetings. I know some people that went every week. I know some people that go every month, and it just is kind of what you have time for. I would say we would appreciate it most if you left it to the people who are able to be there. But this being a fraternal organization, it's important to be able to see each other and help each other in person, because that's kind of what this is all about.
There is something very important about advising and guiding the next generation in front of them and being there with them. It's kind of a shared experience. So good. Thank you for that. Now, in 2024, you became the chairman of the Sigma Pi Educational Foundation. Maybe you could briefly tell our listeners about the foundation, what it is, what it does for Sigma Pi fraternity, what it does for our brothers.
Sure. So the Zeta-Pi Educational Foundation has been around since the 1950s, And it's a way for chapters to have an account, to put it the most simply, to have an account for their own money. We are made of brothers. The board are all brothers. We are here for the undergraduates. We provide the apparatus for people to donate. We talk about people donating and getting a tax write-off and that sort of thing. The fraternity itself is a social organization, so that's not a tax write-off. But the educational foundation, in its name, we are educational under the IRS code. And so people can donate money to us. And by us, I mean the fraternity or their chapter or wherever they want it to go. And we make sure it's used for the correct purposes. And that way the donors get that tax write-off and the undergraduates get the money put toward whatever sort of educational endeavor it might be. So what's important for us is that we do steward the money the way the donors wanted it to be, and the way the donors intended, and we keep continuity. Just some people are short-sighted and they have short-sighted goals, and so we have policies in place that, of course, you can use money, or you can even take loans against the money in case of an emergency and you need something really big right now. But over the long term, we want a solution for the chapter to be sustainable, to be able to use that money for scholarships or to attend scholarship conferences or educational conferences or leadership conferences, including the ones that the fraternity puts on for those undergrads.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned you want sustainable solutions for the chapters. I've been a donor to the foundation for over 20 years, primarily through the Chapter Educational Fund product. And I really do see it as one of the core ways that an alumnus can give back to help make their own home chapter sustainable for the future. And maybe we'll talk more about that here in a minute, but let's talk to the different audiences that might be listening to us right now. We'll start with the undergraduates who are listening. What do you want undergraduates to know about the foundation?
I want you to know, we'll start at the very beginning. I want them to know it exists because there's a lot of people that don't really realize it, or they may have heard about it if they went to convocation or something mentioned. The board previously had a lot of hoops to jump through if you wanted to start a fund. And we moved those hoops. We made it easier to start a fund. I mentioned we kind of we steward the money for the more of the long-term goals. So there are still requirements to take money out so that we don't have someone just taking all the money for a personal reason or whatnot. But as far as a chapter to have a fund, every chapter now has a fund. And that has been less than a year ago. That was when we actually made that switch. But I want the chapters to know that they now have a fund and they are able to put money in it. They are able to solicit their own alumni when they see them, or in person, on social media, wherever it might be, to have money go into it. Because previously the requirement of like paperwork and signatures and all these things were there to start a fund. And now it's there we can start the fund but take the money out. This is important because we don't want a chapter to feel left out just because someone hasn't been able to do that so far. So what we want the chapters to know is that they have a fund and they can start saving. Some chapters have a lot of money already in their funds. Some chapters don't have very much, but they can start saving for the future of their chapter.
And the foundation essentially has two types of scholarships that are funded through the local chapter fund, and then scholarships that are funded from the foundation itself with your corpus. So for the undergraduates who might be listening, I guess they'd have to figure out their local scholarships with their alumni who might be running their local scholarship fund, their local CEF. But for the undergrads who are listening who are interested in applying for a scholarship from the foundation itself, what might a timeline look like? Maybe not specific dates, but when should they just keep their eyes out for scholarships to be available?
Well, every year in January, we have a scholarship window that opens. It's open for about 6 weeks. So it'll open toward the middle or end of January and close toward the beginning or middle of March. Last year, we gave out just over $100,000 in different scholarships to different students across the country. Some have specific requirements about being a certain major or, certain GPA or that sort of thing. Some just go to people who are having a hard time in life. But the point is, there are many different scholarships for many different reasons, and those are available to anyone that meet the requirement of that scholarship. So there are nationwide scholarships. And then, as you mentioned, there are the chapter funds, and those are given local control. We don't say what your chapter does with those funds. Each chapter with those funds, as I mentioned, there's requirements to spend the money. Those requirements are basically that there is a local advisory committee, we call it, but it's just basically a few alumni, 3 alumni, that will get together and say where they want the money to go. Sometimes it's a scholarship to one person. That's a lot of money. Sometimes it's a scholarship to the entire incoming class, and they have an amount that they want, and they divide it among the newly initiated members. Whatever it might be, it goes according to what that local advisory committee wants. So it really is a locally controlled system with those funds.
So for the undergrads out there listening, pay attention. Pay attention to the fraternity social media. Pay attention to your emails. You're going to get notified that scholarships will be available. And if you don't see a notification like that, then start asking your chapter advisor in your province Archon, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about these scholarships? Now, let's talk to the largest population we have in the fraternity. Let's talk to our alumni. What do you want the alumni brothers of Sigma Pi to know about the foundation?
We keep the money safe. We are the place to donate to get that tax write-off. So if you're looking to give back to the fraternity financially, then we are the place to do it, especially if you want to give back to your chapter specifically. We can do that as well. When we do that, we have a board, we have a legal person, we have a financial person, we have a marketing person, we have a bunch of different people that is what they do for their career, in their professional life, and they are giving their time to the foundation. We have our money accounted for at least every year. We have quarterly updates, of course, but as far as a financial audit and review, that happens annually. So we can tell people where their money is going and that it is safe with us and that we are using it properly for educational purposes, and then we're not just giving it to chapters, but we do provide the lowest cost possible. We're a nonprofit, right? So we don't make any money off of the fees and things. Of course, if people donate via a credit card, those will charge us a fee, but those fees are the lowest possible. We do not make any money on that. We, of course, do not have any profit motive. The only motive we have is to give that money back to the undergraduates. And so we keep that money safe and we do with it what they want, whatever they intended it to be, whether to go into one of these national endowments or just their chapter fund. We will take that money, we will keep it safe, and we will only spend it according to how they want.
And so for the alumni listening out there, I can tell you from my own experience, I can validate what Mike is saying. I'm the advisor, the chairman of our local advisory committee, and we do get reports on a regular basis about how the fund is doing and how the investments are going. And when we submit scholarship awards, very quickly we get that money turned around and checks to our undergraduates. It's a really great system. So I can validate from my own personal experience everything Mike is saying. Now, Mike, what are some upcoming programs, maybe opportunities that the foundation has?
So we have, there's always a Founders Day of Giving, which is coming up next month that we will have. So again, check your inboxes and do that. We are very also recently working on a March Madness style bracket for March. And we're going to have a sort of competition between different SEFs that, again, now any chapter can participate in now that all of them have SEFs. So we have things like that throughout the year. And then, of course, different chapters have different things. We're always on call if there's an orchid ball coming up that's a significant anniversary or something like that. we often go to those or speak or even just write a note or have a video to show to encourage people to support their chapters at those sorts of events as well.
Great, great. Look, the fraternity adopted a new slogan a few months back. It's Find Your Purpose. I think the foundation is a great vehicle to help some alumni help find their purpose. But let's talk about you. Can you talk to our listeners about what this new slogan means to you and how Sigma Pi Fraternity helped you find your purpose?
Find Your Purpose, that new slogan is so important for young men today. This is, we've all seen the data. If we've been paying attention, we've heard about men are falling behind. There's a motivation gap. Men are spiraling, involving higher addiction rates and gambling and just overall listlessness, right? There is a lack of positive role models. Traditionally, men were the people who participated in higher education and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of programs geared toward getting women involved. And now that there are more women in college than men, it can truly feel like men are being left behind, especially when you compare the two. I had mentioned earlier, for my own experience, the fraternity helped me through lots of life changes, whether it was switching a major or just dealing with, a class that I was having a hard time in. There was an older brother there who had taken the class before and gave me a better perspective in finding myself and what kind of work I like to do and who I like to date and what the sort of hobbies I like to keep are. Having a group of people where you are accepted because we're all trying to figure it out about what we like to do, it's really helpful. Your whole life, you grow up with your parents, with people guiding you, and college is kind of your chance to go out and find yourself, and to go from parents being involved all the time to nothing, especially if you go away to school, is a really big change. So I think the fraternity really helps guide that person because you have people with some sort of moral compass keeping each other in check with how to do it. But within those sort of safety bounds, you can find your purpose. You don't have your parents or your teachers hovering over you, assigning you things to do about your purpose, about your motivation. You can find it yourself, and you can set your own intentions. You can set your own motivations. And without some sort of support group there, it's really easy to fall into a cycle of despair. So I think it's great that the fraternity was there, again, to help me through it and to help the young men through it, because even when I go to the undergraduates today, I see them saying that they are having the time of their life. They never had the social aspect that they have now, not even in high school when, all of the movies and pop culture say you should be having the time of your life. They really didn't until they got to college and joined a fraternity to have that social aspect.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Hey, look, before we go, do you have any final parting words for our listeners?
Yeah, of course. I first want to thank you for having me on your podcast and for the donations you've given to your chapter. I know any money, especially significant money, can be a lot, and you can use it for other things. But we really thank anyone giving money to, we thank them for helping improving the lives of so many men. I want to thank everyone for joining us on the noble journey of improving your own life through helping other people. We're all busy. Our mere presence does help those in our way, though. So I appreciate the good times I had during my undergraduate experience and continuing into adulthood. I also appreciate the conflict that helped me learn who I am and where I can best place my abilities. The fraternity and the educational foundation realize it would be unsustainable to keep the fraternity lifestyle long past college. But I hope the listeners see the value in what they had and that they're willing to donate their money or their time to help keep this experience accessible to the men entering college today and well into the future.
Great. Great. This is awesome. Hey, if our listeners want to find you, if they want to find the foundation out there in the world, social media, well, LinkedIn, where should they look?
If you want to see about the Educational Foundation, if you go to sigmapi.org/foundations, or if you want to click through, just go to the fraternity's website and there's a foundations tab at the top. You can learn about it. Personally, my name is Michael M. Long. My middle initial is M. So on all of the Meta platforms, LinkedIn, pretty much any social, I'm whatever.com/Michael M. Long.
Great. Thanks for being a guest on the Owl Talk podcast, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can stay up to date on the latest in the world of Sigma Pi Fraternity by following us across social media. We are at Sigma Pi, all one word, on Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. On YouTube, we are at Sigma Pi Fraternity, also one word. Remember, you can always get the latest information on Sigma Pi Fraternity at sigmapi.org. Thank you to everyone who listened to this episode, and we look forward to you joining us for the next Owl Talk podcast.